Do you know the book known as Think and Grow Rich? That's a book by Napoleon Hill. It's very famous. If you've never seen that book, then you better go and get it and read it. And if you've read that book, you know the wealth that it contains. And then comes the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Today, at Now Tell Us, because this is Now Tell Us and I'm your host, at Now Tell Us, we are going to host a very special person who is going to be here, Executive Director and the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So he's going to tell us about a little bit about Think and Grow Rich, about Napoleon Hill, the person, and about the foundation, Napoleon Hill Foundation. And you just don't want to miss this. Please share this episode with all your friends. If you have a question, ask. We would love to answer it. If you have a comment of any kind, please give us feedback. We appreciate feedback. And now I don't want to take one more minute because now our guest today, known as Don Green, is a busy person. And he's found this time to come and be with us. What an honor. So why don't you join me as we go together to meet Don? Here we go. Hi, Don.
Hey, hi Anthony, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Welcome to Now Tell Us.
Well, thank you for having me on. I enjoy what I'm doing, and I will talk about every what you want to talk about. I've
Yeah,
been my background, what I'm doing, and so forth. If you want to, or well, we'll talk about Think and Grow Rich, or um, here's a book I got my friend Russell. I let him do the introduction, a new introduction, and he give them with his people he worked with. We printed 10,000 so far, and they're all gone. Probably end up doing 50,000 or maybe 100 of them. It's the only difference is he tells his story in the front of it. Russell's a billionaire plus, and he's our biggest supporter. But if you want a little bit more from my background, usually people want to know. I I grew up the son of a coal miner. My dad, we never had a bathroom in the house when I was a kid. I grew up poor, but I liked to read and I learned to work hard and I learned how to make money. I was a bank president at a very early age of 41. I went through the ranks and started $1.15 an hour, and I made a bank president. I was at an early age, and I was a bank president for 18 years.
mm,
Very, very successful. We sold the bank, and I was on the board of trustees of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And the other CEO had been involved in an accident. He couldn't travel, and so they told me if I ever got out of the bank, that I had the job as CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Next month, I will start my 24th year as CEO. I've published more than 100 books in 24 years, all of them based on Napoleon Hills. And here's some, I wasn't asked about it, but here's my latest book. Uh, this is published in June. It's a hardback. It's published by Humanix. They own Newsmax cable television. They also own Newsmax magazine. I was on their programs 3 times in June, and I appeared in their June magazine and interviewed. And what that is, Anthony, when we said Napoleon Hill's Secret, the original, they paid me to write the book. The original title, I wrote it as Achieving Success with Action. And the reason being was the word action appears in Think and Grow Rich 77 times. That should tell us something or other. You can have all the ideas in the world, But if you don't do something, take action and do something with it, nothing's going to happen.
Wow.
I give an example. If your spouse says, you tell your spouse you want a cake, and she gives you a big list of stuff to store, you go get the stuff, vanilla flavor, sugar, flour, all these other different ingredients, and you bring them back at home and you set them down on the table. If you just look at them, nothing's going to happen. You got to put them together and go through the steps and take action before you're going to get to cake. And that's what most people miss. They read the books and all, and they may feel good. But then when you read a book, and I have read thousands of books, okay? I read 3 or 4 books a week. I read one yesterday morning before I went to church. I read real fast. And I read another one last night. But I probably average reading 3 or 4 books a week. But when you read a book like this, you should have a pencil in your hand and making marks. What does this mean to me? Where can I use this? Otherwise, now I have friends that write novels and so forth, and I like to read it when I have time to get their writing style. But if you read a novel, it's like a love story. You find out the boy got the girl right at the end, or the uncle died, left him a lot of money or whatever. But you may feel good about it, but it's no benefit to you other than entertainment. But when you write a book of your own, you're reading a book that someone has written, like Think and Grow Rich, you can write your own story. You take the information that you got from the book and then you apply it and do something other with it, and then you get results. You create a life for yourself. You wrote, and everybody's got a story. Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
But most of the people don't get around to telling it, or they don't put it down in print. But we have to learn from other people. As I've used the example, monkeys can learn from other monkeys. If monkeys can learn from monkeys, and I used to have a zoo when I was a young person in high school, and I had a bunch of monkeys. I caught rattlesnakes and poison snakes, put them on exhibit. But if a monkey can learn from a monkey, we must learn from other people. We don't have to make all the mistakes that other people have made. We'll some if we try to, but we can avoid a lot of them. If you're reading something someone you respect, and they say, Anthony, when that stove's on and it turns red, don't put your hand on it. It's going to burn you. Some things you have to assume you learn from a person, if they're reliable, that you can kind of trust what they're saying. You don't have to experience all that, all the bad, and you can try to experience the good and learn from it. And of course, we'll use the quote from our famous writer Mark Twain. He said, "People that don't read, they're no better off than people that can't read." And I have several billionaire friends who support us and are friends. They're all avid readers. They all read a lot. So that might tell you something another, that through reading, we learn from other people what worked, what didn't work, and we get ideas. And sometimes just read enough to say, well, idea pops in our mind. Just like this was a book that come out in June, but I'm writing on a book on vision, and I got just saw something another that made me think of the term, and there's not a lot on vision. And of course, vision is like a roadmap. It tells us where we want to go if we follow it. And I say it's with our inner eyes. I used a quote from Helen Keller, the blind lady, and she said, "Worse than being blind and having no sight was having sight and having no vision." My friend Jim Stovall, I don't know where you know him or not, but he's written 60 books. He went blind, was going blind. He would have been a professional football player, but when he went for his physical, he was developing an eye disease that showed up. And by age 9, he was completely blind. But he's done 60 books. And his first book was You Don't Have to Be Blind to See. And the man's give millions of dollars to his old university, Oral Roberts University. and their entrepreneur center was set up in honor of his dad, George, who died a few weeks ago. I believe he was 92, and
Mm.
he was an 80 some years old for Oral Roberts University.
Mhm.
But here's a man that has accomplished all this stuff, and he doesn't have his eyesight, but he does have vision, and he's a real high sought after speaker. He came here and spoke to his kids at the college for free because of our friendship. But he gets $50,000 for a presentation, $50,000. And when he came here, he was booked up for 2 years.
Mm.
He formed with Ted Turner, their Narrative TV, which has got about 10 million followers, I think. He's accomplished a lot, and like I said, but he does not consider himself handicapped. It's amazing, and of course he reads by speed reading, and he's a person that reads a lot more than I do. They're put on speed, and he can listen to them real fast, and he can go through several books in one day.
Mm.
It's amazing.
Wow,
And
it's quite amazing, quite amazing. And not only can you read fast, you can also. We are believing with the wealth of information that you have. If we give you a stage today, you can talk for 1 week nonstop.
well, I absolutely love what I do.
Mm.
I've met so many people. See, the what I was benefactor of the year last year at the University of Virginia, here where we're located,
Mhm.
because they about $5 million made from books
Okay.
and courses. And this year, on Saturday, this coming Saturday, I'll be honored as volunteer of the year for the college for my
Okay.
fundraising building.
Mhm.
I don't know where they looked at it or not, but I got the award 20 some years ago at the college then. But I've been involved with the college for 25 years. I started a course in 1998 called Keys to Success. Basically, it's a 3-year course. I taught it as a bank president. I gave them the money back. I never took any money for it. They sent me a check. I signed it and put it in scholarships. But the keys to success is it's Hill's writings. It's why are some people successful and others not? Well, now you can say, well, he's born rich. No, I wouldn't. I wasn't. I said we didn't have a bathroom in the house last in high school. I said that's not it. Well, a lot of people got PhDs in college. They're not really successful. They not accomplished nothing. And I've been on the board chair for 22 or 23 years at the college. Schools teach us how to memorize. You
Mhm.
memorize the work and give it back to them, and they get so many credits, and then you add them up, and you got enough, and they give you a diploma. They don't teach you how to think.
Mhm.
And Albert Schweitzer, the famous African doctor, he said when in an interview one of his later years, said, Dr. Schweitzer, what's wrong with people today? He said they don't think. They
Mhm.
don't. And I'm afraid that's the truth. Because we should be able to look at something and say, what's this mean? What can I do with this? And see opportunities. They're all around us.
Yeah.
One of the books I published, we've sold 1 million copies. I did not write it. It's
Mhm.
called Greatest Prayer, Power. It's Your Prayer of Choice. It's written by the psychologist J. Martin Cohey. It's only 96 pages, but I did write the intro on it, and why there's rich people in the poorest countries on earth. There's poor people, like in
Mhm.
the United States, in the richest countries on earth. Why? Both riches and poverty originate in our mind,
Yeah.
and that's simple. I went to a guidepost, if you know who Norman Vincent Peale is. In
Yeah.
my early
I have his
years,
book.
I followed him. In fact, I flew all the way to New York to her 100th birthday, Mrs. Peale's, and I
Mhm.
still am a supporter of them and read their literature. But I used to go to their events in Palm Springs, Palm Beach, and 1 year in Cleveland, Ohio. And when I was sitting at a table, a lady asked me where I was from. My thing said, Wise, Virginia. She said, where is that? I said, Appalachian Mountains. She said, y'all have a lot of poverty, don't you? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, why don't somebody do something to help them poor people? And that's when I told her, I said, ma'am, I said, when a limo picked me up to the airport, coming through Cleveland, Ohio, to go downtown to is a Hilton where the event was. I just happened to look out the window when the driver cut off the street to go downtown from the airport. I looked under a bridge. There was a whole big group of people, maybe 20, 30 people under the bridge. I'm assuming they were homeless. And I told her about that. I said, these rich people and the poorest people on earth. And I said, and vice versa. I said, this Cleveland, Ohio. I said, this is the home of John D. Rockefeller. I've been out to his cemetery. He's got a monument, looked like a Washington monument. It's also home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I said, what I'm telling you is more than you'll learn at going to one of these events. Poverty and riches spring from our minds. And I said, if you'll remember that, it'll take you a long way in life. You can do well anywhere, or you can not do well anywhere. San Diego is one of the nicest cities in California, I think. And I've been there, I don't know, 6, 8 times. Went there for signings to talk and events and so forth. But they have, I guess it's 2 or 3 blocks in San Diego, not far from the well-to-do. If you've been there, they're homeless. They're laying on the sidewalks. They make up beds. They use the bathroom on the sidewalks, and the authorities don't do nothing to them. Why? All they want to do is be picked up and tucked to jail, where they'll give them a bed and feed them. So they just ignore them. So that every major city in the United States has got homeless people. Now, in a little place like we are, if we have a handful, they can be put in a shelter in the churches, and I'll look after them. But in the cities, it's such a big a problem. There's homeless about anywhere you look at any of the major cities. There's homeless. It's a big problem. But and the reason being is they haven't made proper use of their minds.
Yeah. Wow. Quite an insight. Now, let me go a bit back, as many of us watching or listening could be curious on many things up to this point. I want to go back by that time that you met Napoleon Hill. When was that? How did you first come into contact with Napoleon Hill?
Well, I started reading it in high school. I never met him personally, but I read the material when I was in high school. And he's from this area, and that enthused me even more, knowing that he was born. But of course, he left here when he went off to college, went off to law school. He came back to visit. But of course, we know he kind of interesting. His mother died when he was about 8 years old, and his dad married about a year later. And typically, a boy went to work in the coal mines when he's 13 or 14. The girls got married, but his dad married again a year later, and he happened to marry a lady who was a widow lady, but her husband had been a high school principal. She was a school teacher. Her daddy was a doctor. So education had played a large part in her life. So she comes into the home with 2 kids of her own. And then, of course, Hill had 2. He had a brother. And so she took a liking to him, and she encouraged education. And by the time he was 13, she bought him a typewriter. And gosh, if you'll look, you can see the edge of the typewriter in my background, one of them, and the other set up in front of me. He typed his material on. By the time he was 13, he was typing. So his stepmother, she encouraged him. And so he went to the high schools. Was only 2 years back then. Schooling wasn't mandatory, but she had education. He went to a business school for 8 months, and you learned how to become a mail secretary, typing shorthand and so forth. And he looked around, and he thought the richest man in the area was a guy named Rufus Ayres. They called him General Rufus Ayres. He was in the Civil War, but not as a general. He was actually Attorney General of the state of Virginia, and he was a lawyer. So he applied for a job with him and went to work with him. And then he decided he wanted to be a lawyer. So he went off to law school with his brother. Napoleon never finished. His brother Vivian did, but Napoleon was working to pay their way. He was writing for a U.S. senator, had a magazine called Bob Taylor's Magazine. And he did stories, and he interviewed people, and he interviewed Andrew Carnegie who encouraged him to study the philosophy of success. He said he didn't know what the word meant, but he sent him letters of introduction, and he took 20 years to study successful people, and that's it. Why are people successful? Some of them are, some of them are not, and they all did certain things. Like the first one is they had a purpose, a major purpose. You can call it a goal or what have you, and they developed other traits like faith, applied faith, belief in themselves that they could accomplish something or other. And they did persistence, perseverance. And of course, and this is the first time he had been introduced to the mastermind principle, was a use of people's affluence or influence, either money or their brains. And he learned that from Carnegie. Carnegie explained to him how he organized U.S. Steel by getting the best accountants, chemists, and so forth, and to use their brains because he didn't know all and to study steel. And he started buying up the other companies and mass produced it and cut the rates tremendously. And of course, it led to the Industrial Revolution. And we put an event on in Andrew Carnegie's mansion on April the 30th of this year. I work with a group of Napoleon Hill Institute. I don't know where you're familiar or not. They teach coaching of Napoleon Hill principles. A young lady by the name of Cleona O'Hara, who was vice president of sales for Bob Proctor. And we did an event there, and they said it's the first time I'd ever been allowed. But the historian at the Andrew Carnegie Mansion in New York, he told us there were 111 of us that was involved in the Napoleon Hill Institute coaching, that he was worth in 1905, he was worth in today's dollars $150 billion more than Elon Musk. It's amazing. And while he was in his library, he showed us a picture, which we had. We have pictures of him and Hill together. But he said, he had a quote said, it was harder to give his money away than it was to make it. And he would sit there at his desk of a day and let people come in off the street for his church or whatever. And if he thought it sounded good, he would just write them a check and hand it to them. And he gave all that money away, but $20 million by the time he died. He had one daughter, and he had the mansion. Of course, later the mansion went to the state of New York, and you can tour it, but it's amazing. And the historian there told us, a guy named Kevin Draper, he told me they'd never let nobody use it before, but due to the connection between Carnegie and Napoleon Hill, he let us use it, and it was filmed. It was filmed by a real good film crew, and it's just absolutely amazing. Someone has posted one of my favorite self-development books by Napoleon Hill is Think and Grow Rich. That's the one they all use practically. I mean, our friends don't matter whether it's whether it's Tony Robbins or who it is, they got their start by reading Think and Grow Rich. It's amazing the people it's influenced.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have read it a few times. Now, you showed us a book as known as The Secret. Think and Grow Rich. Was it The Secret? Now, in the Think and Grow Rich, there's that secret that Napoleon here says you're going to find it on your own. Is this now your book, The Secret, revealing that secret that Napoleon was kind of not so?
There's nothing else mentioned more than the word action.
Okay.
It's in there 77 times. Of course, he wants. Of course, you can say whatever the mind can conceive and believe the mind can achieve. You can use if that apply. If you want to, you can use that as your secret. That's a good statement, and or the word action. Have a good idea and the application of it. And you'll see the Think and Grow Rich that I'm talking about right behind my shoulder. Can you see it?
Yeah. There's that. Yeah, we see it behind your shoulder.
If
There.
you ever visit us,
Uh-huh.
This is an exact copy of Napoleon Hill's first edition, 1937 copies. You know, the one you showed up is ours also, but it's been condensed. The Thick and Grow Rich itself, the one that's original, it's not been edited or cut out. Uh, uh, it's 380 some pages long, and they cut out about 120 some pages, after I recall. And it didn't really leave anything out, but it's more convinced. But you know, most of the people, they want the original unedited, just like he wrote it, without anything done to it. So
Oh,
we copied. So
that's
we
interesting.
copied it word. We copied it. I could show you the original one. We copied it word for word. Every what's on page 305 in this book, if you had Napoleon Hill's first edition laid out there, 300 page on page 35, it will be this exact page. It's exactly word for word, and
Wow,
it's a best selling book. It's a best selling copy out there by far because it's original.
wow,
It's
that's
so
interesting. But and you said the one that I showed is also yours, one of yours. I think there are several other versions. How many versions are there?
I mean, what
Versions of Think and Grow Rich.
I
How
don't
many editions?
I don't even know because you know
Oh,
they people should don't pay us and what have you. Uh, the ones we have, the one you showed, that's with Random House. They cut it down to they condensed it. He condensed it really. They asked him to. I've got the book and he condensed it from about 1960, I believe the year was, and they wanted a smaller version. Thought it would appeal to a lot of people. It does it. That little green copy that you seen, it's sold. Last time I looked, it sold 11 million copies in just that pocket size in English alone. So I don't even. It's been 100 million copies sold, I'm sure. But I don't know. If you're like me, is I like the original book. I like a hardcover. You know, because I know if it's something that's good, I'm gonna keep it. A lot of people save $2 or $3 and want the paperback, which is fine. But if I'm gonna give one as a gift or something, I want to give the best ones available. Some
mm,
kid gets through high school or through college, you want to gift them a book. I don't think I want to give them a paperback. I want to give them a pay $2 or $3 extra and get a hardcover that they'll be proud to put on their desk and whatever. Uh,
okay.
yeah,
Now, tell us the secret of fast reading, because you say is like you read 2 books in a day. How is that?
it's of course I teach speed reading courses, but if there is a thing on it is you don't read one word at a time. You read a whole line at a time. You can,
Mm,
you know, at
okay.
and the more you read and concentrate, you know, you can't read and watch television or something other, you know. I can concentrate with television on, but a lot of people can't. And I was married 54 years before my wife passed away, and I live alone. Though I owned a cable TV company one time for 15 years, I don't watch television. I almost never watch television, and I
Mm,
never cut the morning. Why would I cut the television on the morning to leave all this bad news? I want to leave the house in a good mood. I wake up for morning, I'm having breakfast, and I say, God, show me someone I can help today. In Jesus' name, amen. And I'm not going to leave this office until I've done something. Fact is, at lunchtime, I mailed a person some books. I happen to think about them, and I put them in a box. And if I'm talking to someone like you, and I don't see that Think and Grow Rich shown on the film like that, I'm gonna send it to them. Okay.
okay.
Because next time I talk to them, I want them to see something other that they can that they can uh, that they can remember about.
Wow, that's beautiful. Wow, wow. It's such an honor to have you here, and we thank you for all that you've shared. And we know if we had more time, you would have shared with us a lot because it's a lot that you've seen. And like I always say, I respect people who've been there before me and experienced life. They've got a lot of wisdom that they can always share with us. And this has been that day. Now, so thank you once again. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, but before we go, I would like you to leave us with a few words that we should always remember. A few words to always remember. Which are they?
Well, I use a little card, so it's in my car. It's on my desk, and it appears in one of the books I published. It's a simple statement. It says, "If it is to be, it is up to me." So if you wake up and you're having troubles, go look in the mirror. Right there's your trouble. You know, we make our own destiny. You know, long as we're blaming, oh, parents didn't send me to right school, teachers didn't like me, there are prejudices out there, there are a bunch of racists. All those things might even be true, but get over it. Get over it. You know, you can't. We don't live in the past. We don't live in the past. And most of our parents did the best they could with what they had. And we can make excuses, but making excuses is like going out on your porch, sit down the rocker and sit there all day. It may feel good, but it's not going to take you nowhere. And you got to develop that attitude. If it is to be, it's up to me. As long as you're making excuses, you're making a roadmap to failure with excuses. It's easy to make excuses.
Yeah.
We live in the greatest country on earth. We got all kinds of opportunities, and if we take them, I'll give you one example of an opportunity. Okay, sometimes it's one of Hill's saying. Sometimes our ship don't come in. Who said you couldn't swim out where it was? Okay, I went to speak one night when I was in banking at a little historical thing, and two things I remember: they did not pay me, they didn't even feed me. But on the way back home, I was listening to audio tape. It was cassettes back then of W. Clement Stone's. And when I got home, I took my pad out, and I always leave something other when I have a thought, I can write something other down. And that now when I got home, I took the pad out on my nightstand, and I wrote a letter to Chicago. And I told them what I'd done about Napoleon Hill. This is where he's from, and so forth. And I got a letter from W. Clement Stone, a billionaire who was chairman. He asked me to come to Chicago and have dinner with him. I thought it was, at that time, I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. I was chairman of the board of a local hospital. I was on the board of college. I was involved, and I had all these businesses. I had a cable TV, I had spring water, I had a dry cleaning business, I had Dollar General stores, I had Pizza Hut stores, and had land development. I don't know what else. I was into all kinds of things, but I thought there's always time to do what you want to do. It's 24 hours a day, and we all got. A lady told me one day she didn't have time to read. You got 24 hours, haven't you? Average person watches television 7 hours a day. So I wrote them, and they wrote me, and I got my plane ticket and went up there. I had dinner with him at the airport because he knew somebody that had offices there that owned the airlines, and they catered the lunch to us. And he told me how much. He said, I swear you know more about these books than I do. He said, you ought to be a board member. And I asked him what I have to do, Mr. Stone. I call him Mr. Stone like everybody else, except if you was in my office over there, you'd see a picture of him and Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan signed it, said, Clem, your friend, Ronald Reagan. He signed it. It's hanging on my wall. But everybody called him Mr. Stone. But I served as a board member, and then I had the opportunity that when they needed somebody another to step in place. And I moved the thing from Chicago down here because I did not want to live in Chicago. And so I moved to here, and we've been here now. October will be on the 24th year. So we make our own opportunities, but nobody's going to come up and knock on your door and say, Anthony, boy, I got a deal for you. It's not going to happen. It's not going to. We have to make if an opportunity is not in front of us, make our opportunity. There's a blue million things out there you can do if you have a mind that can think and can imagine. And even Einstein said, I use this quote in my book on vision. Einstein said, imagination was more important than knowledge. And what we imagine, we can bring about if we wanted. And I'll use my friend Zig Ziglar. I did a fundraising with Zig 2003. How I know that? It's a picture of him's hanging on the wall. We did a fundraising at a Christian college. And he said, everything in life comes down to how bad do you want it?
How bad do you want it?
And most people, they just sit there. They'll take if it's put in their hand, but they're not going to get up early. And they're not. I'm going to get up early in the morning because I'm going to catch a plane. I'm going down there and meet with all these people of influence, and over 5,000 of them in Orlando, and people like Russell Brunson and a whole bunch of other people. That's authors and people in marketing and what have you. They 5,000 some people paid $997 a piece to attend that thing.
Hmm.
Somebody says, "How do you effectively integrate what you've learned from the book and apply it in your day-to-day life for positive results?" I start off with a pencil and I use a little thing called do it list, and I list things on it I want to accomplish it. And of course, I also believe in goals and writing them down. People says you don't have to write goals down until they're writing down. And they're just a dream. You write them down. If you said was, for example, Anthony and I sitting here in the office and we said we want to go to Florida. Well, I know enough to know that you got to go south, and then we start making plans for them. And not only that, what it is, try to do something every day. Every day. Don't they? I told the college kids the first night, go to your dorm, home, everywhere you're staying at. I want you to get your calendar out. I want you to look for someday. Someday I'm going to do this. Someday. They 7 days in a week. Some days not one of them. When we say someday I'm going to write the book, someday I'm going to pay off my credit card day, someday I'm going to start this or that. That ain't nothing but lying to ourselves. There is no someday. We have to say, when I get my paycheck, I'm going to pay extra $10 on my credit card. We have to make plans to put them down, write them, and then carve them out. And because as long as we're thinking, the book is good, Think and Grow Rich, but you got to do more than think. You got to take action. You got to make plans. You got to persevere. You got to get people to help you if need be. And it all comes down like Zig said, how bad do you want it? You got to do something on it each day, because each day you waste is a day wasted and puts you one day farther away. And if you want it bad enough, you can get it. I'll end with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "If we only knew what we was capable of, we would amaze ourselves." And I include myself in that too. I include myself in that thing. In one of the interviews I did for the magazines recently, I told them, I always have a little bit of internal dissatisfaction. I don't care how good I do. I know I can do a little bit better. The banker in me keeps me running totals, numbers, what I'm doing. I don't care how good we do this month and last year. I'm going to do a little bit better. Or at least that's my intentions. I'm going to do everything I can. And sometimes it may not be. I mean, for example, you want to do something. I've had a historical marker put up. Well, I thought with nothing to it. I thought I could get it done a year. It took me more than a year. I was on the second year before I got it done because I didn't know all the difficulties to run into. But that don't mean I fail. Sometimes it take a little longer than we meant, because if we're going back to college, we got our schedule laid out and we lose our job or what have you. Maybe we got to take a job less money. We don't have as much money. We can take less credits and you have to spend it out a little bit. That don't mean you fail. But the main thing is you got it in front of you and you're doing something on it to take you closer to it every day. And for every day you don't do something is a day wasted.
Wow, wow, that's quite an insight. Thank you very much, Don. It's been a pleasure having you here. We've far exceeded our time, but it's okay because you're sharing some important nuggets with us. And we thank you for coming. We are just about to sign off. And Brian says thank you for answering his question. That's Brian who had asked the question. And also, we thank you, Brian, for coming onto our show. And everybody else who could be watching or listening, we appreciate you taking your time and being here with us. Remember to share this video audio with all your friends, and let's put our thoughts into imaginations. And not only that, let's take some action towards what it is that we imagine to have results. Once again, thank you very much, Don, for coming to Now Tell Us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I enjoy what I do.
Yes, so that's Now Tell Us for today. I have been your host, Anthony Morore, and together with our guest today, Don Green, we are saying bye for now. Until next time,
Thank you.
keep it positive. Yeah.